gonna show you one more quick thing, and that's something found in his starter kit. When you go to the download site for the tools, you also access the developer resources and training material. One of them is this starter kit, this one's called Platformer. There is a version of this for Xbox 360, phone, and PC. And really, there's hardly any difference between the code between any of it. But let me just run the Platformer real quick to see what it looks like. It's a really nice way to get started doing platforming game development because you can swap out all the assets. So there's some neat little animation going on here. I got my little character at the bottom of the screen. I can make them jump.
Hey Glenn, hold on. It's not updating the screen. Is there? Okay, hold on. Sorry, it's coming up now. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You're good.
So I got my little character there. I got some background music happening. Normally I would be able to control this with the tilt of my phone, but because I'm in the emulator, I don't really have good support for that. But it's just a nice illustration of that. So if you go and download the starter kit for the Platformer, that's a really great starting point for you.
Okay, question.
All right, Edwin, how much time do we have left in this session?
You got another at least 10 minutes, and then you said phone gap would be about 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, so another good...
Are there any other XNA questions?
There are, hold on.
It's a more general question, but like Game Center on iOS, I assume there's some Xbox Live ecosystem where people can post high scores and compete with one another. So how do you integrate that with your games?
Is there an Xbox Live ecosystem? How do you integrate that with your games? Something similar to what's on
Game Center on the iOS.
Game Center on the iOS?
Okay. So that's an excellent question. We do have the ability for Windows Phone games.
Hold on, Glenn. All right, Mass Effect or Gears of War 2?
Did he get a shirt?
All right, go ahead, Glenn. Answer.
Okay. So the Windows Phone supports Xbox Live integration. And you saw that earlier with the demo of the Game Center on there. From a developer's perspective, you can write games for the Windows Phone and publish them through the marketplace using just the regular App Hub subscription, which if you're in the DreamSpark program, I think there's no annual fee for that. Now, if you want to have a game that has integration with Xbox Live, including achievements, your friends, the ability to do turn-by-turn game requests right through the Xbox Live system on the phone, that's a separate arrangement that you would need to make with the Xbox Live team. That sort of arrangement is usually reserved for companies that have a couple of solid games under their belt or are working with an existing publisher that already has that arrangement with the Xbox Live team. And that being said, it's not off limits for anybody because if you get a couple of games in market and they're pretty neat and you can show a great reason to integrate with the Xbox Live services, you could get in touch with Edwin and he could put you in touch with the Xbox Live team. Outside of that, we see people that are setting up their own services to track this, for scores. A popular game that's across all three platforms that I like to play is Words by Post. I don't know if you guys know that one, but that has a separate, game tag system and a separate score system and a separate turn-by-turn system that exists outside of Xbox Live. That's totally fine. That developer created it from scratch, and it supports all three of the platforms that his game runs on, which is iPhone, Android, and Windows Phone. So that's what most people are doing, if they don't have an agreement with the Xbox Live team.
Cool. One more question, yeah?
A big problem with Android was the backwards compatibility and with the fragmentation. Can you talk about how you develop for different phones over time and how the hardware integration works with that?
So, there's a fragmentation in Android marketplace. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about building apps or games for this phone moving forward with all the other devices coming out?
Sure. There's two main concepts when you're talking about fragmentation. One is the actual devices themselves. They have all kinds of different screen resolutions. They might have different kinds of controls. And the other one would be the core version of the OS that's running on the device. One of the great things about Windows Phone is that it's the same operating system on all of the phones. So when you write a game for Windows Phone 7, it's going to run on pretty much every single device. Now, the one caveat for that is that there are additional markets coming out where there's going to be some devices that have lower memory stipulations. With those lower memory stipulations, there are a few things that you would have in a full Windows Phone app that you wouldn't be able to have on those devices, such as background tasks and that type of thing. But for the most part, the Xnay games that you write are going to translate across all the different devices that are out there. You know, they're all touchscreen, they're all 800 by 480, they all have an accelerometer, they all have a GPS. So, you know, that's a really common platform for you to be able to target. And it just makes it much easier when you're writing games, or any kind of app, really.
Okay. One more question, we'll let Glenn move on a bit. Yep.
So we talked about advertising, but what kind of support and what's the policy on in-app purchases?
So we've been talking about monetization stuff. What's the support for in-app purchases?
Policy.
Right.
Or policy, yep.
We don't have an existing framework. I believe that that's on the roadmap. Again, I can't really speak for the Windows Phone team and where they're going with that. You know, currently there are providers that, like, you know, Amazon, for example, when you buy a book, you want to read it through Kindle. There's the Kindle app on Windows Phone, so you're able to do that. We don't have plumbing in place on our side for an in-app purchase, or you're able to, if you want to set up your own plumbing to do that, that's fine.
Okay, keep going, Glenn.
Okay. So the other approach that I'm going to show you for writing Windows Phone games or Windows Phone apps is something called PhoneGap. And this is a great platform for cross-platform compatibility. PhoneGap allows you to write an application in HTML5, use a lot of the HTML5 things you already know about, like geolocation and IndexedDB and you know, Canvas, that sort of thing. It allows you to use lots of JavaScript libraries like jQuery and tons of others that, as long as they're pure JavaScript implementations, will be able to work. And then you package up your code, your HTML5 app, inside of a host container for deployment to that multiple platform. And we've recently announced, and they've come out with, PhoneGap for the Windows Phone. Now, it's actually part of this project called, what do they call it now? I forget what they call it. Cordova, sorry, Project Cordova. And PhoneGap is an implementation of that. It's a great way to get started if your skills are in HTML5 and JavaScript. However, you know, because it is still running as if it's in a browser, there are a couple of quirky little UI limitations that I'm going to show you as we go through it. But in essence, what you do is you go and you download this runtime, you add it to Visual Studio, which is what we were using earlier. You're able to create HTML5 applications and have them hosted in a Windows Phone app. So the way you would create it would be, once it's installed on your system, we would do File, New Project. We would pick the template for PhoneGap, so I'm just going to search my templates. This one's called Cordova Starter 3, so I'll hit OK. And it's going to get a project that has a hosting page for my application, and then a whole www folder that has all the actual files of my application. So in this case, if I pulled up index.html, you see I've had this text at the top that says Hello Cordova, and I've got this other thing at the bottom. I've got this div down here. I've got a style sheet with a bunch of styles inside there, and I've got this Cordova JavaScript file, and this handles the interaction between the JavaScript that's called from the index.html and the underlying runtime for Cordova, which is called gaplib, and that's up here. Those are all included in the template. So now what I would do is I would simply open my HTML file and I would start adding my HTML and my JavaScript. Here I can create additional folders. You know, I can add a new folder if I wanted and put JavaScript files or images in there, and then I can write my code this way. From here, I can also, you know, reach into the local file system and do something. I can reach out to the internet and pull some data down. You know, I can have various controls on the screen, buttons and labels and texts and text boxes and so on. So if I were to run this now, you essentially would see a Windows Phone application come up. Let me rotate it back. You'll see a Windows Phone application come up, and it'll be a blank screen until this HTML takes over. This is the splash screen right here. And then here's the HTML coming over. And now we also have this message, Cordova is ready. And let's look and see where that came from. If I look in the source from my HTML5 page, you'll see I've got a little script here. So the script is referencing, first of all, the Cordova.js file. And then secondly, the script is adding an event handler for device ready, and that's when all the scripts have parsed and loaded. And then on device ready, we're doing two things. We're writing out to this div that Cordova is ready, and then we're getting window.device.cordova, and that's going to give us the version. And then secondly, we're using a little debugging here, which allows us to do some console logging, and that output was right down. Whoops, scroll too far. That log is right down here. Okay, so it would be at this point that you would then expand on this project, and you would build additional capabilities for your code in HTML and JavaScript. I'm going to open up the test project, the example project that comes with this PhoneGap library. And notice this has a slightly more complex www folder. And they've got examples in here for interacting with contacts, the compass if your phone has one, the camera, audio things like playing music, location services, your network, those are all found in here. So if I were to run this, I'd see my HTML5 app loading, running within my phone app here. And I could go, for example, to accelerometer. And on my emulator, I'm going to open up the accelerometer. And right now, I'm going to get the position, which is 0, almost 0, and 0. So now if I take this and rotate it, and I do get acceleration, you see I get different numbers. So this is the HTML5 code interacting with the underlying Windows Phone application that's being hosted in. I can do things like location, I can do the camera, capture an image, I can test your network connection, I could go after contacts, talk to the file system, do location, do notifications if I want, do some local storage. So there's a wide variety of things you can do. Now this code that you're seeing would run pretty much unchanged if this were PhoneGap for iOS and or PhoneGap for Android. And that's really a great starting point. But at some point you're going to want to bring in Windows Phone specific features. So I'm going to show you a couple of PhoneGap things that allow you to do that. The important thing you want to do though is add the features in such a way that they don't break your code for the other platforms. You want to be able to maintain cross-platform compatibility between devices. So here's an example of integrating PhoneGap with one of the constructs on Windows Phone, which is called our app bar. Now, the first thing I want to show you is the app bar. I think you may have seen it already in some of the other demos. But if I go into the search app on the phone, this is not my PhoneGap stuff running. This is just the Bing search app that comes with Windows Phone. The app bar is what lives along the bottom of the screen. You see I have 4 buttons on my app bar. The first one is Local Scout. The next thing is for doing music identification, which is a little bit like Shazam. This is for doing visual identification, and this is for giving your phone some voice commands. In addition, I have menus down here. And the nice thing about the app bar is if I rotate the phone, the buttons will rotate properly to the bottom, don't interfere with the screen, they have a nice translucency there. So how would we add one of these to our PhoneGap application? Well, a lot of people take the approach of saying, well, I'll just duplicate this in HTML5 and JavaScript. I'll make a div that I'm going to pop up and down, I'll put some icons on it, I'll manage, click events on the divs. And it turns out that you really kind of want to keep the app bar outside of your HTML for your PhoneGap because it's so much easier to work with. Let me go to my code now for my PhoneGap application and show you that what I've done is I have my PhoneGap view. This is my HTML5 host right there. But then below it, I have my phone application page. I have one button on this page, and the icon is refresh. It's a little graphic. And then I have a little bit of C# code